Good morning, everyone. Let's do some prayers. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Swaha, Tatsavitra Varenyam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Diyo Yo Nah Prachodayat, Astoma Satgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, मृत्योर्मामृतं गम्य ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सवीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति 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 ॐ. Okay, we are still in the same chapter 4 and section 3, and a conversation between King Janak and Rishi Yajnavalkya. And Rishi Yajnavalkya is telling us that it is the mind that is affected in all the three states by the presence or absence of pain and pleasure. And these are the conditions of the mind alone, not of the Atma. And this mind is animated by their divine energy alone. And the unity which is seen is due to the homogeneity of the pure non-dual consciousness. And the varieties which we see, the waking, dream, deep sleep, those are just the expressions of the mind. So the consciousness remains hidden behind all the expressions in the form of the mind and its modifications. So the experiences in all these three states, we can exhaust our past impressions also. It is said that it is the force of the impulses in the mind that wakes up in our sleep also. And Rishi Yajnavalkya gave two analogies over here for us to understand. So this consciousness remains unaffected by the experiences of the three states. One analogy he is giving is a great fish in a river. That fish is swimming from one bank to the other bank, unaffected by the currents of the water. And the other example is of a big bird, falcon, which flies during the day here and there in the sky in search of prey and mate, and in the evening returns to its nest for rest. It is said by this great rishi that the consciousness experiencing the fruits of past merits and demerits through delusion, desire, and action in the two states of waking and dream. But in the deep sleep, it rests. And the dreams are caused by the memories of the experiences of the waking state. Strong thoughts of others, divine forces, and Guru's grace can help during the dream state also. Prarabdha karams can be exhausted in both the waking and the dream state. So in one sense, the happiness of the deep sleep can be called the result of the meritorious karmas which we perform. We know that if we have done good karmas in a day, we can enter into that deep sleep very easily. Often in our Hindi language, we say sukh ki neend. A person who practices reflection and meditation on the Supreme in the waking state may have the experience of the similar reflection and meditation in the dream also. The feeling of oneness and samadhi, which we experience in the waking state, can also be experienced in the dream state also. Even though we know that in dream, nothing really is happening. That's why the scriptures make it a very startling statement. Na nirodh, na cha utpatti, na badho, na cha sadhaka. There is neither the creation nor dissolution, neither the bound nor even the aspirant, neither the man who is after liberation nor the liberation. That is the absolute truth. So the absolute transcends both. All the controversies among the different philosophical schools come under the relative phenomena only, while the subject of their controversies always remain transcending them. It's like the thread in a cloth, butter in the milk, gold in the golden ornaments, rope in the snake. That's how this is supreme is eminent and pervades the whole universe. Scriptures also say that there is a similarity between the deep sleep and the state of liberation. But in fact, there is no experience of objectivity in both. These states are the opposite poles. Because in the deep sleep, there is a ignorance, while in liberation, turiya, there is not even a trace of ignorance. In liberation, a person is in full awareness of the absence of duality, while in deep sleep, a person is unaware of the presence of duality. So these are some of the topics in this section. Rishi Yagyavalkya is bringing out to our attention in the presence of King Janak. Let's start with the verse where we ended our last week's class. I think it's verse number 17 on page number 328. Sava esh etat asmin budante ratvaha charitvaha dishte eva punyam cha papam cha punha pratiyanyayam prati yonyah dravatihi swapana antah eva. After rejoicing and wandering in the waking state and merely seeing the results of good and evil, it hastens back in a reverse way. just to its previous state. That is dream, or the dreamless sleep. So who is saying it? Rishi Yajnavalkya. From the dream state, the Purusha comes to waking state. And in the waking state, we experience the good and the evil effects of our karmas. And again, goes back by the same route through which he came to the dream or the dreamless sleep state. So constantly we just keep on going through all these states. And even in the waking state, he remains a mere spectator of the good and evil. He means the Purush, the Atma. He is completely free from agency and consequently from the evil of death in the form of desire, action, and its results. So only watches, spectator. So over here in this verse, the self has been described from the standpoint of the ultimate reality. That means it's independent of the upadhis, all the limitations. It is attributed to it by ignorance due to the limiting adjuncts, upadhis. And what are those upadhis? It could be our mind. It could be our prana, or intellect, organs, and the body. All of them make us feel we are limited. But in reality, we are not. So that's why all of these are called upadhis, or the limiting adjuncts. But Atma is totally aware and awake during all these states. Then in the next verse he says in 18, Tat yatha mahatmasya ubhe kul anushyartihi purvam cha apram cha evam eva ayam purush etat eva bhavantaha anushyartihi swapanantam cha buddhantam cha. As a large fish swims alternately to both the banks of a river. So this is the analogy I was talking about earlier. Eastern and Western, even so does this infinite entity moves alternately to both these states, which are the dream and the waking. So Rishi Yajnavalkya is giving a very beautiful illustration to show how the Purush remains unattached. Just like a great fish in a river goes on moving between the two banks of the river. While swimming, it's not at all affected by the intervening current of the water. The same way, the Purush, while moving from waking state to dream state and back again from the dream to the waking state, is not affected by the actions of the body and the organs, as well as their stimulating causes. Desire, the subtle impressions, which are caused by the ignorance. The Purush is not affected by it. Now you can see that how the self-realized people, even when from outside we see that they are going through hardships of life, but they stay calm. Because they have really realized, that is the realization is self-realization, who they are. Nothing ever happens to the Atma. But out of our ignorance, we think that things are happening to us. People are honoring us or dishonoring us. Body is going through the suffering. Nothing is happening to the Atma. So this is where he is bringing our attention to. And this is something which we need to meditate upon. Who are we? And this is the real yoga. To realize who we are. Now let's look at next verse, verse number 19. तात यथा अस्मिन् आकाशे श्येनो वः सुपर्णो वः विपरिपत्तेः श्रान्तः संहत्ये पक्षौ संलय एव ध्रियते एवम् एव अयं पुरुष एतस्माः अन्ताय धावति यत्र सुप्तो न कश्चन कामं काम्यते न कश्चन स्वप्नं पश्यति. As a hawk. So this is another analogy. Flying variously in the sky is exhausted. Stretching its wings directs itself towards its nest only. Even so does this infinite entity hasten to the state where, falling asleep, it seeks no desire and sees no dream. So this mantra is throwing more light upon the characteristics of the self. It is of the nature of eternal peace. Eternal peace. Not just a fluctuating peace or a little glimpse of the peace. It is of the nature of eternal peace. A hawk which, having flown throughout the day in search of food, mate, etc., is totally tired, returns only to its nest. The same way, when a person is tired of his actions in the waking state and experiences in the dream state, he enters into the deep sleep by withdrawing it into himself all experiences pertaining to the two states of waking and dreaming, and rests in his own self. The one non-dual, homogeneous, absolute consciousness. In other words, the individual self, freeing himself from all relative attributes and all the limitations, feels like very close to that supreme self. But this union is temporary. And by the force of vasanas, which take birth out of ignorance, he again comes back to the waking world or to the dream world. And we'll see that in the next mantra, Rishi Yajnavalkya is throwing some light on the nature of the deluding ignorance. Is ignorance natural? Or it is a part of the self? It is the definite conclusion of the scriptures that ignorance is not part of the self. Because if it were the nature of the self, liberation would become impossible. Both scriptural conclusion and experience by the wise rishis reveal the fact that the liberation can be attained only by the destruction of ignorance, agyan. And that's the reason we go to Guru. That's the reason we just bend our head down at the feet of the Guru. so that this ignorance can be removed by the teachings and the grace of Guru. Let's look at next verse. Verse number 20. Ta vaha asya etaha hita nam nadyo yatha keshaha sahasrada bhins tavat animnaha tishtanti shuklasya nilasya pinglasya haritasya lohitasya purnaha ath yatra enam ganantiv jinantiv hasativ vichyayatihi गर्तम एव पततिः यद एव जागृतेयम पश्यति तद नः विद्यः मन्यते अथ यत्र देव इव राजेव अहम एव इदम सर्वो अस्मि इति मन्यते सो अस्य परमो लोकः. In a man are those nerves called hita, which are as fine as a hair split in 1,000 parts, and full of white, blue, brown, green, and red serums. Now, when he feels as if somebody was killing him, or overpowered him, or an elephant was chasing him, or he was falling into a pit, in short, fancies at the time through ignorance whatever fears he has experienced in the waking state. That is dream. So also when he is a god, as it were, or a king, as it were, or he thinks, I am this universe and comprise all, this last is his highest state. There is a reference to the nerves, which is called hita, which are the seat of the subtle body, the repository of all subtle impressions. That has been explained in this mantra. Rishi Yagyavalkya is saying they are full of white, blue, yellow, green, and red colored essences. The food which we eat, in the process of digestion, changes its color, and sometimes there is an intermixture of the humors in different proportions. And he is saying that the subtle nerves, also through which the humors flow, assume different colors. That's why we, in our meditation, those energy centers, which are subtle part of our body. And that's why this Rishi said they are so thin. If you split the hair into 1,000 parts, so that means they are so thin, no instrument can detect it. Those are the nadis in our body. But the yogis, they see the color in them. And these are the colors he is mentioning. So in a very cryptic statement in this mantra, Yagyavalkya is showing us how a person who has not attained sufficient purity of mind can be miserable in dream, because he feels separate from the objects of the waking state. This ignorant person considers himself to be finite and feels that subjected to the evils of death. And in dream also, he does not realize his identity with the objects and commits the same mistake of thinking that they are external and outside. That's why sometimes we just pay so much importance to the dreams. We think that's a reality. In our dream, we think that somebody is chasing us, trying to kill us. Or we can see that somebody is overpowering us. And he uses the example of elephant seems to be chasing a person, etc. So that's how we make our dreams also seems like they are true and we become afraid. So the ignorance which consists in the false identification with the finite results in the conditioned self who feels himself limited. So even though we are not limited, we are eternal, but we feel limited. We think that we have been cut off from our source. And that is the reason we start to desire something else. More the desires, the farther we are from this truth. And then desires are followed by actions in the physical plane. More the desires, more the actions. And those actions, they produce results in the form of pleasure or the painful experience. So this ignorance, the avidya, agyan, ceases when a person attains sufficient purity of mind. And where is this purity coming from? Meditation. And meditation cannot happen without surrender. When we realize our identity with that absolute, only then we can feel that purity of meditation. And when a person has reached there, so even in dream, such a person cannot budge an inch from the realization of his identity with all. This person is even a little failure in feeling this identity, he is afraid of. Because that is his supreme world. He comes to his natural state of the supreme self. That's where we see that ignorance has proved to be not a natural, inherent attribute of the self. And elimination of this ignorance becomes possible. Now let's look at next verse, 21. Tadvaha asye etat tichantah aphat papamabhyam rupam tad yatha priyayah istriyah sampravisvaktaho na bhahyam kinchan ved na antram evam ev ayam purushah pragye in atmanah samprishvaktaho na bhahyam kinchan ved na antram tadvaha asye etat apt kamam rupam shok antram. That indeed is his form, which transcends desire, is bereft of merits and demerits, and is fearless. As a man fully embraced by his dear wife knows nothing external or internal, even so this infinite entity, fully embraced by the Supreme Self, knows nothing external or internal. That indeed is his form, in which all objects of desire have been realized, in which they have become the self, and which is devoid of desire and beyond grief. So this is how that yogi feels. And that indeed is the nature of all of us, whether we have realized it or not. That identity with all which he is referring to is the nature of the Purush. He is beyond all desires and is in complete oblivion of this world phenomena. That's what he is explaining here with the example of a person in the full embrace of his dear wife. As long as they are separated from each other, their desire for being united remains unfulfilled, and their minds are full of misgiving, fear, etc. But in the close embrace, they are in union. In that condition, they remain unaware of other happenings or objects, as well as the inner states of their minds. The same way the individual self, by being closely embraced by the Supreme Self in a deep sleep state, attains perfect unity with the Self. Does not know anything either external or internal. The experiences of the homogeneous bliss. That's why it's called Anandamay Kosh also by the yogis. His nature then is perfect unity or oneness, devoid of all duality. This identity, with all in the form of the cessation of all dualistic experiences, is not achieved in the waking or the dream states. Why? Because of the ignorance. And that's why a person desires, fears, grieves. But when everything has become his very self, why should he desire anything? There's nothing left to desire. For what? No object, no agent. So there's no manifestation of special knowledge such as a desire and its any forms of grief, fear, evil, etc. Let's do one more verse, then we'll stop. Verse number 22. Atra pita apita bhavati, mata amata, lokah alokah, devah adevah, vedah avedah, atra steno asteno bhavati, bhrunah abhrunah, chandaloh achandalaha, polkasaho apolkasaha, shramnoh ashramnah, tapsoh atapsaha, anangatam punyen, anavgatam papen, tirno hi tada sarv shoknah hridasya bhavati. In this state, so he is talking about that oneness. In this state, a father is no more a father. A mother no more a mother. Worlds are no more worlds. The gods no more gods. The Vedas no more Vedas. In this state, a thief is no more a thief. The murderer of a worthy Brahman no more such a murderer. A Chandal is not a Chandal. A Pulkas no more a Pulkas. A monk no more a monk. A recluse no more a recluse. This form is unaffected by good actions. The unaffected by bad actions. For the self is then beyond all afflictions of the heart. So this was verse number 22. So it's a deep sleep he's talking about. He says that a father is no father. mother, no mother, etc. These relations of father, mother, and the like are the results of the karmas. For the individual soul finds his parents according to his karam in the previous births. There's a reason that we were born in a certain family. The reason that some kids came to us also. But the self being disassociated from karmas is disassociated from their results in the form of such relations. For him, worlds are no worlds due to his being disassociated from rights through which they are attained. To him, gods are no gods, for he has disassociated from meditations also which result in identification with gods. These gods are like devatas. Okay? So he is untouched by all good actions. He is untouched by evil actions, like stealing, killing, etc. He is also beyond all duties attached to any order of life, such as brahmacharya, grihastha, vanprastha, and sannyas. He passes beyond sorrows and fear. Mind is the repository of all griefs, desires, and attachment. And at this stage, he has transcended the mind, transcended the intellect. He passes beyond all sorrows of the heart, which is the seat of the mind. So whether you want to call this a state of the mind, in the dreamless state, Sushupti. In Sushupti, we enter every day, but unconsciously. But we can reach this state with the help of our own sadhana, which is a samadhi state. So in samadhi, we are aware of it. In Sushupti, we are in the deep sleep. So we'll start next week. What else he's telling us about all of this in the rest of the chapter. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnase Purnamadaye Purnameva Vishishyate Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much for joining, and I'll see you next week.